Well, I started off, I knew coming out of high school that I liked healthcare. So I wanted to be a gym teacher, is what I wanted to be. But did kinesiology at the University of Waterloo. I played varsity hockey there. And early on, I figured out that I wanted to help people in a sports injury type of an environment. And then I got injured playing hockey at Waterloo, and we had a chiropractor on staff. And he got me well and got me back on the ice. And that was really the beginning. And after that, I knew that chiropractic was the way I wanted to go. Well, 10, 12 years ago, I was at a men's conference with Jerry Organ and Paul Henderson, and I was with my partner, Ed Quirk, and he asked the men that were there, who was ready to make a recommitment to the Lord, and both Ed and I knew immediately that that was what we were supposed to do. And so we went up to the front and recommitted our lives to Christ, and out of that really was the springboard to, we need to commit our practice to the Lord as well. And at that time still, my wife Marie, who was also a chiropractor, we practiced together for 15 years. And we started slowly making the steps of transforming our practice from being a secular practice with Christians working in it to really being a ministry, being an expression of what we do. Yeah, so I actually graduated in 1986 from Canadian Memorial Chiropractic College, and my wife Marie graduated in '88. And we started Hunt Club Chiropractic Clinic together, I guess 20 years ago. And we had a very successful practice. We practiced together for 15 years. But about 10 years into practice, it would have been around 1998, is when Dr. Ed and Marie was starting to fade out of practice a little bit because we had two boys that were at home, and she felt the calling to stay at home more. So we brought Dr. Ed in as a partner. And I think it was 1998, him and I went to a men's conference before Billy Graham was coming to town. And it was put on by Jerry Organ and Paul Henderson, and we really felt But what Paul Henderson did at the end of that is that he made a call to the men that were ready to recommit their lives to Christ. And Dr. Ed and I both knew that was the time for us to do that. And so then we were, at that point, intentionally trying to transform our practice to be more transparent as I don't know if you can say it's a Christian practice, but we would honor God in our practice more and more. And I had a friend of mine, Ryan Dawson, who discipled me as well. He was the national director for Athletes in Action at the time, and he spent a lot of time with Dr. Ed and myself and a group of other chiropractors in early morning Bible studies at 5 o'clock in the morning on Wednesday mornings in my house for about 3 years. And he challenged us to talk about God on our whiteboards, to have worship music, to have Bibles, and every one of those steps was excruciatingly painful. It was like, what's going to happen to my practice? Is everybody going to leave? But, the challenge was there, and we did step forward through the pain, through the fear, through the unbelief, and now we have what it is today, which is a practice where we can express God in our practice and, offer healing for our patients, and it's just a wonderful place to practice. Yeah, it was 1998 that Ed and I recommitted our lives to Christ, and then God started working supernaturally in our practice, and we had supernatural growth. It got to the point where we had people lining up. It was our old building, and it was old and dilapidated. I think God planned it that way because it wasn't about the building. It wasn't how splashy things were. He was just sending people, and we just literally couldn't keep them away. And in the mornings when we would open up our practice, they would be lined up out the door and around the corner into our parking lot. And what happened was we literally the practice went from serving around 500 people a week to 2,000 people a week in the course of 1 year. So we had set the goal. We thought it was an absolutely crazy God-sized goal of adjusting 2,000 people in 1 week by the year 2000, and that's what happened. So it was 2,000 and 2,000. It was absolutely beyond, nobody can explain it. It was just a God thing. God filled the practice, and it was just unbelievable. Yeah, I mean, the 2000 and 2000 just came out of, I think, a discipline of morning time. One of the things that Ed and I did, and this is what we teach in our Warrior Coaching Program, is that in order to hear God's voice, you have to get up early in the morning. So we had a discipline of getting up at 4 o'clock in the morning, 7 days a week, and we would spend time in the Word, spend time praying and meditating, and then just listening. And we really felt that 2,000 by 2,000 is something that God showed us. And so we had absolute confidence that he was going to take us there, even though we had no idea how that was going to manifest. So the way that the practice is structured is that most people, when they come into the office, they have a very, what we call a mechanistic model of health, where it's focused on pain relief. And the way we practice is in a wellness model and based on a vitalistic model. And the principle is above, down, inside, out. So health comes from above and it comes from the inside out, as opposed to what everybody else does in the Western world, which is inside out in the form of drugs and surgery. And so what we need to do is we need to transform their way of thinking. So the first thing that happens is they do go through a traditional consultation examination so we can determine what their problem is, but nobody can start care with us until they go for what we call our doctor's report. And internally that's called a conversion report. And because we need to convert them from their way of thinking into our way of thinking. And so on a Monday night, we'll do an hour-and-a-half presentation talking to them about how the body works, how God created the body and the incredible power within that one cell, and then the power that God put in the brain to allow the body to function, heal, and recreate, and how that all that information flows from above, down, inside, out. And so only until they understand what we're trying to do with them, then they have an opportunity to start care. And then we lay out a program for them where we don't want to just take away their pain, we actually want to correct their whole spine. And so traditionally it takes a minimum of 12 months to do that, which is another reason why it takes a lot of education, because we're, in the Western world, we're convinced that health has to happen instantly. All we take a pill or potion or lotion and within a day or two I need to be feeling better. But true healing doesn't happen that way. And so that's why the whole education process happens. And then once they make a decision to start care, we'll be seeing them 3 times a week and then twice a week, and eventually they come down to once a week. And so what we've done is we've really made a process that's very efficient. But obviously you can see that it's an open concept environment where everything is computerized as well. So we have a paperless system. So when the patients walk in, they swipe their card, they take their seat, and they kind of remember who goes in front of who. And then the wonderful thing about that too is that there's a tremendous amount of community that happens within the conversations in the chairs and in the tables. And then obviously they load themselves onto the tables, we adjust them, and they kind of keep track of who's next. And then, once they're finished here, they can just walk out and they're done for the day. But what really also we believe, one of the principles that we believe in is that the healing starts as soon as they enter the office. And so we tell the ladies that are our assistants is that, and they truly understand and they buy into this and probably believe this more than we do, is that, the healing begins right from the greeting. And so every patient is greeted by name, and everybody understands that whether it's greeting the patient at the front door, or it's doing an examination or a consultation, or just saying goodbye, that's all part of the healing process at our office. Well, what we used to do actually is early on, we used to hit people over the head with God. And so right from the first consultation, we start talking about how God does the healing, and we wouldn't even give them an opportunity to establish a rapport with us, and people would get offended, of course, because not everybody in Canada believes what we believe. And so what we've done is that now we introduce it in the report of findings, in the doctor's report, and we start talking about how God created the body from, and then He breathed life into the one cell, and then that one cell has the power and capacity to create a human being. And we usually, what we do is I take a step backward and say, it's okay if you don't believe what I believe.